Welcome to the Highly Sensitive Podcast. I'm Lauren LaSalle, and I'm a licensed therapist, highly sensitive person, and HSP coach. This bi-weekly podcast is meant for highly sensitive people and their loved ones, as both experiences will be discussed. Thank you for joining me, and let's begin. Welcome to the Highly Sensitive Podcast. I'm Lauren, and today I wanted to talk about one of the topics that I really love working on with my clients, which is setting boundaries. And in episode 3, I did an overview of boundary setting for HSPs and have decided to dedicate a few more episodes specifically to boundary setting where I can go more in depth. And I'm hoping that breaking it down into sections and giving you things to reflect on will be helpful if this is something that you are also working on. Some of this information may be a little repetitive from episode 3, but I thought it was important to include it in this episode as well. Today we will be talking about barriers to setting boundaries, which is a great place to start before getting into boundary setting itself. If you are listening to this at a time where you are able to jot things down as we go, that could be helpful because I will be asking you some questions to think about, and you can always pause the podcast if you need to write down your answers or just think about them, whichever works best for you. As highly sensitive people, it's not uncommon to put other people's needs ahead of our own, as I'm sure you are aware. We are often very aware of how others may feel, and we tend to people please so as not to make others feel badly or be disappointed in us, and potentially also trying to avoid making ourselves feel badly. There can be several reasons that keep us from setting boundaries, and one big one is people pleasing, which seems to be very common among HSPs because we tend to want to be there for other people, make sure the people around us are feeling okay, and because we're so focused on what their needs are, we don't think about our own needs, so boundaries are not set. Another reason is not wanting to disappoint someone and not wanting to feel guilty yourself. So maybe you know what your need is and you know what boundary you need to set, but you don't set that boundary because you are afraid of what the other person's reaction will be. You don't want to upset them or disappoint them, and you also maybe want to keep yourself from feeling guilty about their disappointed response. Another reason is feeling that other people's needs are more important than your own, and this is absolutely not true. Your needs are important too, but it can be so easy to feel this way, especially when you are empathetic and caring and you want to make sure that everyone around you is doing all right. And another reason is thinking that this person needs you to help them or to fix them, which is a trap that I used to fall into all the time growing up, thinking that I'm the person that this other person needs because they always come to me, so I need to be available whenever they need me. So, why do HSPs tend to put others' needs ahead of our own? Sometimes it is having an awareness of how other people may feel. Like I mentioned before, we don't want them to feel disappointed or upset. We might people please to avoid making others disappointed, and we also might want to avoid making ourselves feel badly. Your experiences that you've had in your life influence how you think and feel about setting boundaries. So maybe you've had experiences where you are trying to set boundaries and it's not responded to well at all, so eventually you just stop trying because it doesn't seem worth it. Or maybe you're so used to being there for other people that you're not used to identifying your own needs. Some common feelings related to setting boundaries, especially for HSPs, include guilt, anxiety, fear, and disappointment. So take a minute and think about what feelings come up for you when you think about setting boundaries. So this could be related to identifying your own needs. It could be related to having a conversation with somebody about setting a boundary. It could be related to how you think the other person will feel or how you'll feel. Or you can think about an experience in the past that you had with boundary setting and what feelings came up then. There are some signs that you may want to work on setting boundaries, and if setting boundaries is something you've already been working on, then I'm guessing you may have already noticed some of these signs. So, some of the signs include feeling stressed out, feeling overwhelmed, wanting to avoid hurting others' feelings, feeling resentment toward others because of what they are asking of you, fearing that you will damage a relationship if you say no, putting others' needs before your own, wanting to avoid confrontation, and difficulty saying no. So sometimes not setting a boundary can initially feel okay because you are maybe avoiding those feelings of guilt, you are avoiding disappointing the other person, you are avoiding experiencing all of these feelings that you don't want to have or that you don't want someone else to have. But not setting boundaries can also result in us not feeling great because our needs are not being met. And people are often more receptive to boundaries being set than we anticipate they will be. Often, people just need some time to process the boundary that is set. So, initially, they might be upset, they might be disappointed, but usually they don't hold that feeling against you because they understand where you're coming from and they just need that time to process this change. Setting boundaries can help you reclaim your time, reclaim your energy, and it can open up space for more self-care, more time with your family, more time for enjoyable activities, whatever you wish you could be doing if you were able to say no to certain things or situations. Plus, acknowledging and paying attention to your feelings and needs can help you live your life in a way that feels more balanced and true to your values. So now I have a couple questions to ask you, and reflecting upon these questions about barriers to setting boundaries can be a good way to start your boundary setting journey. And these questions can help you take a closer look at what might be standing in your way when it comes to setting boundaries. And having a better understanding of the answers to these questions can be beneficial to actually starting to set boundaries. So here are the questions. What is keeping me from setting boundaries with others? What feelings come up for me when I think about setting boundaries? How do I think other people will respond if I set a boundary? What are some of my past experiences with setting boundaries, and what were the results? I hope this episode has helped you identify and think about what your barriers to setting boundaries are. And if you feel like you could use some one-to-one support with this, you can email me at lauren@laurenlasallecoaching.com to schedule a complimentary connection call with me. If you have any ideas for episode topics, if you have any questions for me to answer on the podcast, or if you would like to write an email sharing your story for me to read on the podcast, you can email me at lauren@laurenlasallecoaching.com. You can find out more about my coaching program, as well as resources and links to my social media by visiting my website at laurenlasallecoaching.com. There is also a link on my website to join my email list, and by doing so, you will receive a free resource from me called 5 Self-Care Tips for Highly Sensitive People. Before I sign off, I will leave you with a quote. The only thing wrong with trying to please everyone is that there's always at least one person who will remain unhappy. You, Elizabeth Parker.